here we're going to build on what you've just learned about Cornell notes, and mostly by offering alternatives, because for the sake of full disclosure, I never took Cornell notes. Notes that I'm going to provide to you here as an example kind of look like notes I would have taken in an undergraduate class. These would have been handwritten. I've typed them out just for the sake of you all being able to read them. And this example comes from some of our old notes about regime types and government systems, and such. And with this example, if you go back and look at the assignment where you had some guidance on what to take, this would be different. This would be if I had just kind of took a cold approach to the text without any specific instructions from anybody else, just to kind of give you a sense of what textbook notes might look like. These would also apply to lecture notes. So let's kind of talk about what I would do. And I know for some of you, this is not going to be, or probably for most of you, this is not going to be any kind of revelatory exercise, but I do want to provide examples because I'm still noticing that some students are, especially for textbook notes, writing too much while writing too little for lecture notes. So anyway, let's get into this. You can kind of see that my headings are going to line up with what's in the text. And for the introductory stuff, notice following the headings pretty closely. From the get-go, ways to classify regimes. Take a couple of notes here. Notice that there are going to be kind of three categories: who participates, how is political power distributed geographically, and legislative executive relations. Which brings me also to the point of reminding you, use abbreviations whenever possible. Figure out your own system. If you're consistent about it, those abbreviations will work even if they're meaningless to other people. All right, and from there, kind of look at some of these headings. So we have democracy, we have direct democracy, representative democracy, or republic. And here I'm also building a little bit on some of what you would have seen in the iCivics reading, where we see republics are indirect democracies. And from there we go to dictatorship. And we also see that that's also known as authoritarian. And just kind of follow through with the main points in each subject. But notice I'm writing no complete sentences. I'm using abbreviations for recurring things like government as much as possible. We've got some of our other definitions of types of authoritarian regimes as we go. And of course, I didn't have you take notes over tribal and other republics. But again, like I said, this example is meant to be as if I had just approached the text without any instruction. Okay. Put some kind of divider in when you switch major topics, because we've gone from who can participate, democracy through dictatorship, to that geographic distribution of power. And we just follow along through those topics. When they give you an example like Great Britain, use that example. Jumped around on me there. Still wants to jump around. All right. You guys get all the added commentary of a middle-aged man grappling with technology. You're welcome. Now, get another divider here because we're going to be looking at legislative and executive relations. And here, the notes kind of tell me that we're going to have two different types. So for this, and you could have done this with federal, confederal, and unitary up here. It doesn't have to follow the bullet point list thing. But here I made two columns because we're going to have two different systems, and it's going to be nice to lay those side by side to compare the two. And again, notice just everything's bullet points, no complete sentences, abbreviations whenever possible. And then what I would recommend doing after you've kind of finished with your note taking is go back with a highlighter and highlight headings at least, important key terms maybe under those headings. When we get down here, for things like pros and cons, I did highlight them for presidential and parliamentary. And remember, when I gave you guidance on these notes, I did instruct you to pay attention to advantages and disadvantages. So you could have done the same thing, highlighting pros and cons up here. Now, some students will come up with kind of elaborate schemes for different highlighting colors meaning different things. I've seen other tutorials on notes that suggest doing that. I will just tell you from my personal perspective, anytime I attempted to use one of those systems, it ultimately broke down because of my inherent lack of organization, also tendency to lose highlighters of different colors. So for me, it'd just be generally highlight the important things just so that they're easier visually to grab out of the notes. But of course, you could come up with a more elaborate system. Also, here, want to draw your attention to an example of notes from another student who's taken this course. And theirs is different. So mine differs from Cornell Notes in that there's no cues column, there's no notes column. It's just an outline with bullet points to kind of keep headings and sub-ideas and all of that kind of lined up. And then for, I guess you could call my cues or the highlights to draw my attention back to things. But there's no summary, there's no reflection. And this is kind of a middle ground between those things. I like how the student has boxed things off for different components of the notes. And they are making a more efficient use of their paper, right? Because the whole paper is filled. I mean, if mine had been written on a notebook, most of the paper would have been just left empty. And yet the way the student has underlined things, put asterisks to indicate major topics, I think that is a very good way of organizing things. And you would certainly have fewer pages to flip through, and yet you've got nice visual cues. And you could, of course, go back and highlight these things as well just to make it easier, but for this student's way of organizing things, I'm not sure that adds a whole lot of value. Okay, so at 7.5 minutes, that may be more than you ever wanted to know about my thoughts on note-taking or examples, but keep these in mind. If you're already doing one of these, awesome, but if you're struggling to find things in your notes and keep them organized as we pile up more and more notes, I would encourage you to use Cornell Notes. Maybe use my example, or this. And again, with all of these, abbreviate wherever possible. Okay, and if you've got questions about note-taking, or if you ever want to show me your notes to get kind of my opinion or recommendation specifically for you, please just let me know.